I'd like to welcome one of my dear friends to the stage, Charles Platt. I know Charles because he responded to a LinkedIn article that I wrote from Institute for the Future. I had more views on that article for Institute for the Future than I did after writing the whole book. So I was actually in this building. I was a consultant, and a friend of mine who was in strategy, he's like, hey, I know you're in impact development. You should go do this class at Institute for the Future. And I said, where's your crystal ball? And I made all the futurist jokes that people usually do. And then I actually went to the class in Palo Alto. I spent 8 weeks with Institute of the Future and going through the strategic foresight class. And it's something that literally changed the trajectory of my career. My argument after getting back in that class is that for all of us that develop digital products, we're developing things for the needs of right now. By the time that we develop and we launch and adopt those products, it's going to be 6, 18, 20 months from now. The needs are going to be different. The environment's going to be different. We need to integrate strategic foresight into our own strategy and see what's coming ahead. Perfect example of this is NVIDIA. Back around 2015, the CEO of NVIDIA saw what was coming. They were primarily making chips for video games, but he saw AI coming. And he completely switched his track and he said, we're going to be the leader in this as it's emerging. And NVIDIA now is one of the most valuable companies in the world. So being able to have this edge, again, we're not predicting the future. We're looking and we're saying that here are different scenarios that the future can hold. What are the similarities that could happen? What's going to be different? What are we going to place our bets on that we think the environment, the scenarios are going to be? So after Charles commented on my article, I looked at like, who is this guy? And I saw him like, oh, he lives in Chicago. And I'm like, hey, what's up? Thanks for liking my article. You want to go grab tacos? And we have friends set. So I'd like to welcome to the stage my dear friend, Charles Platt.
This is always the fun part. Oh, we just take it down. All right, great. We can see everything. So, thank you guys for coming. Really appreciate it. I know everyone's busy, especially in the middle of a work day. I hope to give you guys some things in this here that you'll find valuable that you can actually use, take into whatever you're doing. I agree with what Michael was saying, which is in this space, if you look up people who do strategic foresight or futures thinking, a lot of times, there's some gatekeeping. People see themselves as, I'm a futurist, you're not doing this right, why are you talking about it like this? For us, I work in design and research. I never saw it like that. I would talk to my research director and others on the team and say, this is just another, strategic foresight in particular, methods, practices that we would use in design thinking to deploy to consume uncertainty or create a shared understanding. So that's how I was actually trying to use it, is how do you pull that into your toolbox to make better decisions, to de-risk bets before you put it in the marketplace. There's my Blue Steel AI-generated headshot. It's amazing. A couple things I am going to point out. I thought this was just interesting, not that I'm trying to show off with the degree. ASU, this was fascinating to me. When I was looking to go back to school years ago, if you would have asked me what would have been my degree when I was in my 20s, if I would have finished it, it would have been a tactical design degree. As I got older and matured, I realized that research and design is in service to innovation. So I wanted an innovation degree. So ASU had this amazing program. Here was the crazy part. All of the future stuff that I wanted to be able to do in strategic foresight, they had multiple classes on it. Welcome to the Future, Strategic Foresight, Navigating Futures. They have all of these professors who actually force it on you in their curriculum. So I had to write a paper for a class called Innovation, Politics, and Markets. I had no clue they were going to make us do strategic foresight. It was a 30-page paper. They wanted to know, lay out all the scenarios of this future by this time. So it was exciting to get into that. And then I actually had been looking for a master's program and was just accepted into their public interest technology program. Again, they push strategic foresight, futures thinking, innovation, and all of those sorts of things. You're seeing this now more and more in universities, right? Michael Marshall and I were talking a little bit before this. What we're seeing with strategic foresight and futures thinking now is what you saw 15 years ago with UX. That, oh, look at this. Everyone wants to try to get into this and angle and do these things. There was an article even talking about, is futures thinking the new design thinking? You know why? COVID happened. All of these other events happen. They drop on us, and then people want to be able to say, well, how can I better prepare for that? How can I anticipate what could be coming? Every time I wanted to learn about future thinking or strategic foresight, I would listen to a podcast or talk to somebody, and this is what I would walk away feeling like. I was like, why is it every time I talk to you guys, it's so ethereal? Like, I want to be able to apply this. How do I do it now? Because if I have a CEO that I have to go talk to, and he says, oh, your design and research team is doing all this great work, and I start saying, emergence, and this, and that, he's going to go, get the hell out of my office. I have to go talk to shareholders every 3 months. Tell me how this helped me deploy and de-risk faster. So, I went on this journey where I wanted to be mentored by people who were playing in these spaces, in strategic foresight and in futures thinking. It is a little different. I won't get into all of that now. It's a little cultic. I kind of sit between both kingdoms. But these are some of the people that I was fortunate enough to learn from. Brian David Johnson, who runs the threat casting lab at ASU. He does work for NATO, for the US military, and MasterCard. That's some interesting, sounds like I'm saying Dairy Queen all of a sudden. Robin Champ, who I got a certification from in strategic foresight. She headed strategic foresight for the Secret Service and the Department of Defense. Dr. Lauren Keeler, who I will be showing you the project that we will walk through, was my mentor on this for 2 different classes. We also got to co-design strategic foresight session for people in the Department of Energy, where they were building a new prototype where they could pull fuel from the air in Arizona and either convert it to battery power or to fuel. And then lastly, Stefan Bergheim, he worked for the UN. He's more of the future thinking, tries to stay away from some of the strategic foresight stuff. The people on the left who do more of the strategic foresight stuff, a lot of times they're called the suits. And then on the right, they're called the hippies. That's just how they look at each other. But Michael said, first I'm aging myself. I mean, some people are going to go, who's this guy? Yeah. Oh my God. It is not predicting, right? A lot of people think that's what you're doing. We're not able to tell you things like this. This one, though, I could probably tell you to run on that second one. So what is it? Well, the CDC has on their website, first off, they stood up a strategic foresight practice. Andy Hines, who runs the Houston Foresight Program, I believe he was the one that stood this up for the CDC. When did this happen? After COVID. A lot of organizations are now doing this. You see Amazon, Microsoft, other government organizations, NGOs all doing this. Strategic foresight is an action-oriented discipline related to future studies. The practice of strategic foresight does not predict the future. Instead, it looks ahead and asks what may be coming, how it might affect us, and what we can do today to prepare for the future. So it's anticipatory. Then there's this guy. I want to set the stage a little bit for this. So now I know how to put product in my hair, but back then it was kind of a mess. Oh, and I think at this time I was 112 pounds too, which was pretty sweet. When I was that age, every summer I would go to the library during the summer, like every day, every other day. And I would take out books on the Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, and aliens. And I was so excited about learning about these things, and I thought it was so cool. And then one day, the teacher says, when we come back to class, she says, you guys get to do a speech on whatever you want. I'm like, this is it. I'm going to tell them about the aliens. So, as this class is going on, there's a show on WGN that comes out called UFO Cover-Up Live. I'm like, this is perfect timing. It's like a 3-hour show. I'm going to date myself on this one again. A guy from MASH was the host. Some of you are like, what? It was a show. Look it up. So they have this guy on here, 3 hours. They're talking about aliens and the crash in Roswell and all that. And I'm just stuck to the screen. And they have people like this. You know he has to be telling the truth because it's not his real name, it's Falcon. And he's shrouded in a shadow because they'll probably kill his family if they find out what he's doing. And his voice was all garbled. And so I was so excited about this that I did my entire talk based on that show. And I go into the class, and the teacher says to me that day, oh, you know what? I'm actually going to put two of you guys together because Jason's also doing a talk on aliens and extraterrestrials. I'm like, oh, okay. We'll see how this goes. So he goes first, and he's being rational about, well, these things in the sky, and what are we going to do? I'm like, okay, buddy, calm down. I get up there, and I proceed to drop on them that not only have we been communicating with aliens, but that they eat strawberry ice cream, it's one of their favorite foods. They live to 300 to 350 Earth years. They have a religion, a universal religion. They believe the universe is a supreme being, on and on. When I drop this information on them, you can assume they were so excited. Oh my God, Charles watched this one show, the only source. This guy's amazing that he told us these stories. It was like Rudy. They put me on their shoulders. They carried me through the halls. My non-existent dating life, all of a sudden people were talking to me. No, of course that's not what happened. This is what happened. Why did this happen to me? I didn't get it when I was younger. I was like, wait a minute. I watched this show. This guy is on TV. He's a credible figure. These people, like, they're saying these things. It's on TV. They won't lie. There is a great West African author. You should look her up. Pull that QR code. I'll give it to anybody, too, if you want to get more detail about it. She does a TED Talk called The Danger of the Single Story. It is one of like the best, just the title alone. I mean, her TED Talk is awesome, but just that title, I was like, I gotta steal it. So you can say, well, Charles, this is like an adorable story about you as a kid being mocked for your alien tales. But we don't do this every day. How many times in our organizations does the CEO walk the hallway and he talks to somebody in sales who heard someone say the following, and now we're changing entire roadmaps, and we're going to put these resources here, we're going to do this here, and we didn't validate anything because of one story and a person who had authority, who we thought was telling the truth, were willing to change our entire plan. Every time I have talked to, we built a team at CCC Intelligent Solutions, which is a SureTech company, we're publicly traded. When I got there, we had 4 people. Now we're, I think last week, 32. But we have a research and strategy practice. We had to convince people to get a research and strategy practice. Because there were times they would say, well, we hired these product managers and they know, they worked in the industry. But then you find out, well, when's the last time you've done that job? Oh, 15 years ago. So a lot of the times they try to focus on, well, what is the methodology you guys are doing? What's this? It's going to take too much time. And I always come back to this question. When is the best time to find out you are wrong? I don't care. I don't want to talk about qualitative, quantitative, all these things. I'm just going to ask you this question over and over. And if we don't do these things, who owns the risk? So let's get back to this. If we want to take this to another level of maturity, it's not just the idea of the danger of a single story. It's the idea of the danger of a single future. When we go to build products, this is a timeline we build products on. We say, this is what we're forecasting, right? We do this with our 401ks. Oh, it's going to grow 8% a year. That never happens. It never does. If you look what happens, it went up 32, it dropped 25, it went up 5. It's never like that. So we build against the forecasted future products that we release based on personas, KPIs, goals, and problems. And yet, there's these other possible futures that we don't take into account when we're building those products. Now again, this is not about prediction, right? It is how can we create these alternate possibilities or futures, learn from those spaces, and then take seeds from the future and plant them into the present. If you run an innovation foundry or anything like that, you know that when they do a lot of Horizon 3 work, that work isn't always like, oh, I can deploy this into the regular product lifecycle tomorrow, we can do these things. No, but there are pieces of experimentation that you are going through that you can say, well, this thing didn't work, but that camera technology, I'm pulling that in now. So when you go to do those things, you can still pull pieces in. And this is also what happens here when you start to think about alternate futures and those scenarios. So I gave you guys that whole build-up to get to this part of the exercise, which is, because we're a publicly traded company, I can't disclose some of the ways we've used it internally, because I won't do well in jail if I get in trouble for that. So what I am going to do is actually show you a real project that was done, that I was mentored on, and got really experimental with it about 4 years ago. But I feel like this gives people the pragmatic approach. How can you use this now to start de-risking things? So when we think about the future, one of the ways that I like to think about it is terrain. How do we traverse terrain? How do we move through it? What are the parts of the terrain that I'm working on currently? When we talk about things in life, everything seems to be like geographic or terrain. Oh, it was smooth sailing. Oh, it was an uphill battle. Oh, it was, this and that. We always do that, like we're on this journey. So the first thing that we want to do in this approach is to say, well, what do we want to know more about? What are we trying to explore? And the way that you create those exploration boundaries in your space is, because you can't do everything, you want to create a research question. Because that research question should then be guiding and creating those boundary lines for what we're going to explore. Now, if your research question is, isn't AI so cool? Well, that's ridiculous. You're never going to get good scenarios out of it. You really want to dig in. So this one, and I'll tell you if there's any other researchers in the room, because my team's done this to me. Oh, your research question, it's a little long. Yeah, I get it. I wanted to experiment and do some things. It was an academic one. But I want to show you guys a couple of things in here. This was about healthcare. How will the rapid growth of smaller, more powerful smart devices and artificial intelligence working alongside humans and robot surgeons change healthcare and medicine by 2040? I was trying to be very specific about what pieces of technology would be used, because those are what I wanted to explore. And one of the ways to make these tighter is to put a year on it. Because it doesn't just go all the way out. We're trying to create this box and say, what could this look like? So the first thing that we did is you do a horizon scan. Well, in an academic setting, they usually do literature scans, where it's, hey, take these peer-reviewed papers, read all of these things, add some articles, whatever. If you're doing this in, where it's not an academic space, I would do a lot more. I would be bringing in interviews with subject matter experts. I would be talking to them, getting the transcription from this. There's all sorts of other things you could do. But for this one, this is what we were doing. We went and picked out 22 peer-reviewed papers, 9 articles. The whole goal in scanning is allowing us to drag a net across that space, and you're looking for drivers of change. It's going to be a little hard to read, but I'll walk you through some of this. The first thing you're doing is, as you're going through and synthesizing what you're seeing in the papers, you're starting to take notes and you're starting to find themes. Population age, adoption and trust, climate change increase, political instability, populist controls, technology investments. All of those sorts of things, they start to come out of all of the papers. The other thing you want to do, and you can use steep or steeple or what, they have like 50 of these versions, right? What you're trying to do though is just making sure that you're going across the gradient of areas that can be affected. Social, technological, economic, environmental, political, right? You don't want to just keep it focused on one. And then what you do is, you're going to try to find what are the critical uncertainties. So you do a very simple critical uncertainties analysis, where you rate them on two areas: uncertainty and impact. Now, here, I'm only using 15 of them just to save some space. But you can see these were like the top 15 and then how they were kind of stacked ranked against each other. Why do we do this? Because in the next part, we actually want to find out what are going to be the critical uncertainties we're going to use to create the scenarios. So we start to map those, where we rank things on uncertainty, where we rank things on impact. And what we're looking for are what are the ones in the upper right. Why? Well, if something has a lot of impact, but there's not a lot of uncertainty, who cares? We probably already know about it already, we're aware of it, it's not like it's going to be a curveball. And vice versa. If there's a lot of uncertainty but there's no impact, why do I care? We're looking to build scenarios off of the ones that are in that upper right quadrant, because that's how COVID drops on you and no one knows. What are we going to do? So what you do is you pick two. And we're going to walk through this pragmatically, like layer by layer. I want you guys to see this. So we picked adoption and trust and availability. And then you create the poles. Wide and deep trust of new technology in healthcare versus distrust and concerns, new technology widely available, and then little access. What starts to happen then is you're going to make a 2x2 based on those two critical uncertainties. And your scenarios are going to come out of those. So if I have a high adoption scenario and high availability, optimistic future, right? Everybody gets access to it. If I have high availability but low adoption, hurdles to overcome, we're going to explore this one as an example. Waiting for tomorrow, high adoption but low availability, and then cautious future, low availability, low adoption. Now the great thing about this is there's different ways to put these scenarios together. If you look at people like Jim Dator and others, they'll have templates for scenarios, and they'll say like, oh, use this template or this template or this. I actually like building them like this because I feel like you get more nuance. If you don't like how these are coming out, you can always go back and switch for a different critical uncertainty, and then now all of a sudden you have different scenarios. So these are the scenarios that we would want to start exploring. So here's what's going to happen. We're going to go through them. There will be an initial scenario summary and key insights. We will use things like flash fiction in order to put users or stakeholders into the narrative so that they can understand it a little bit better. You can do something as simple as a SWOT analysis across the scenarios, right? This doesn't have to be magic. You can grab tools and methods that you already know. And then we're going to do a summary of the implications for those chosen stakeholders. Here we're seeing this would be done for hospitals and healthcare workers. So all four of these were done. I'm really just going to step you through these and we'll fly through the other. But hurdles to overcome, I thought this was an interesting one, right? It represents a future where robotic surgeons and AI in healthcare are widely available, but stakeholders are hesitant to adopt them due to concerns about accuracy and security. Now some of us go, well, nobody would resist those things. They want these great things. Oh, really? So let's look at what could happen in this scenario. Now I initially written this out as flash fiction just to kind of bring them in. But as Gen AI has gotten better over the years, we can now do things a little differently. Samantha's been waiting for this moment for weeks, ever since her doctor had recommended robotic surgery to remove her tumor. She had been doing research and digging through forums and conspiracy websites to find out the truth about these machines. AI-controlled robotic surgery. Next day, Samantha, the benefits of robotic surgery are well documented. It's minimally invasive, reduces tissue damage, and shortens recovery time. I just don't want to take any chances. I don't want something inside me that I don't understand or trust. May I ask why? Can you tell me more about your concerns? Samantha took a deep breath. I've done research mostly on YouTube and some Alex Jones videos. I've read a lot of things that make me concerned. I think there might be some kind of conspiracy going on, and I don't trust these machines. I did this before some of the stuff has been happening over the last few years. I was like, wow, this is identical. The doctor now wondered if he had enough gin in his hidden desk flask to get through the day. Ultimately, it's your choice, Samantha. While I would like you to reconsider and listen to some more experts, we will explore other options for your treatment. What did this do? Now, we had a little bit of fun with this, of course, but in all seriousness, this happens. There are people in my family, and here's the thing, I'm going to actually defend them a little bit on this. Not that I agree with them, but I had a person come to me who is not like part of the Illuminati, or thinks that the Illuminati is taking over in the New World Order. He said, Charles, I don't want to be a guinea pig for something. I get it. So this is reality. These are real people, personas, Samantha and Dr. Jen and Tommy, who we're going to have to deal with. We're going to have to look at that future and what does that mean? So we get to the next section where it talks about we're doing a SWOT analysis, right? And here we're doing the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I won't go through all of it. By the way, there's a lot of text on this. I will give any of you this deck. Hit me up on LinkedIn. You don't have to do the follow. You can go in for the full hug and just click connect. It's totally fine. I will send you this deck, and you can go through it, and I'm happy to answer any questions on it. But you can see here too, right, that like, hey, procedures are available to those that want them. There's lower wait times. These are some of the strengths because not everybody's adopting them. But then you look at some of the threats. You look at some of the other issues going on, right? When you give this to those hospitals and doctors and healthcare workers, they start to understand the reality that they may have to deal with. How do we then have to go out and start educating people? It's not just taking care of them, we're going to actually have to educate them on these things. And so then here we get, lastly, this is just more of a summary of kind of next steps. There's a couple things I called out. There's fears around privacy and technology can hinder the progress of adoption. Political leaders have the power to either advance or stifle innovation by shaping public perception. We have seen this, right? If a public official says, I don't believe in this, all of a sudden, a lot of people don't believe in it. So we have to be aware of these things. How are we going to get around that? How do you create a way to educate people to get past that? So you're not just delivering a solution or an AI, enhanced process for surgery. You're actually having to educate. But by going through these scenarios, we started to see these things rise up. And then it gives us that ability and that foresight to say, well, this is what we can do to deal with that before it comes. And then these, I'm just going to fire through. All it's doing is just showing you we did the same thing for every scenario. So earlier we showed, right, that research question carves out that area of the terrain. And then we zoom in. And then we've created those scenarios that basically interrogate that area of the terrain and those different flavors with it. So let's recap. Number 1, define your exploration boundaries and stakeholders. Number 2, scan for drivers. Number 3, rank and map your critical uncertainties. Number 4, pick your 2 uncertainties and build your scenario quadrant, naming each one. Key key insights, SWOT analysis, breathe life into your scenarios. I'm not in a cult. You can use kind of whatever you want, whatever that you want to do here. And then make recommendations, design next best actions, backcasting. There's a piece of this we won't have time to cover, which would be then what, right? If you created these futures, how do you then backcast to the current? If I say, hey guys, next year I want abs, well, how am I going to get there? Oh, Charles, maybe stop with the gin and tonic, stop with the ice cream, stop the whole bag of Cheetos consumption every day. Like, all of those things, right? So I would walk back from there and say, what is my plan to get to that? The Q&A is sponsored by my two dogs, Monty and Lola. So if we have a couple minutes, I'm happy to answer any questions. If we don't, we got 5? Okay. Any questions? And Mr. Carmichael, you are an expert yourself. You should get in here because you may need to help me answer some questions. Just in case somebody has a question, you're amazing at this as well. So, yeah.
So the word that's coming to mind is unlearn.
Unlearn?
Unlearn.
Okay.
Is in your work, can you think of anything, any myths, any standards, any conventions that you feel like are not applicable or they're even counterproductive that folks like us can scrutinize about what to unlearn to contribute to this sort of thinking? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So, one, I would not become precious about any of the information. I wouldn't become precious about any of the information. What I mean by that is, you'll do all of this work, and the exciting thing is, oh, look at all this, I get all these things, and then we start to get locked in to that work. In particular, like in UX, when we do design and research, we tell people not to get locked into the persona, but it's a little easier, right, because that's in what we can see. Here, we have to be able to discard them even quicker, because these are not as real as what we would see in like some of the things that we're doing, you know, in technology today. These could be far out there, so we want to be able to use some of these as more like guardrails. Like this whole thing, I don't want this to seem like, oh, I took this super complex situation and then I just like untangled it all and now it's perfect. It's not. I'm only using this to force myself to deal with the complexity. And so I think as you guys are working through things like this, it's good to have, what is the line, I forget, the Roman emperor, when a general would conquer a city, there was a guy that would follow him. And as he would walk through the city and tell, do you know the story? And he would basically read to them that like, you know, hey, we own you now, blah, blah, blah. There would be a guy behind him saying, you are not God. And he was reminding him that he wasn't the emperor. I think in those scenarios, you need that person walking behind saying, okay, we're doing this to explore, we cannot become too precious about this. We're using them to bring things that we're finding into the present, but this does not mean this is happening. And we can't lock ourselves into that. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, what's coming to my mind is the phrase, the ink is always wet.
Yes. Yeah, I like that a lot. I agree. It's very fluid. And then when you start to do this and you start to become more rigorous, there is that tendency for this to become concrete. And you have to use it to just inform things, but you have to also be willing to just disregard it when you need to.
Just because something is explicit doesn't mean it's rigid.
Yeah, I would agree. Sir, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. First event like this, how do you do this in polite conversation? Not that I suggest you do this with a spouse, but how do you practice this day to day? Like,
it's a great question. I can actually tell you a quick. I actually did this with the former CEO of our company. So when we were building out the design practice, I got there, we had 4 people. 2 UX designers, 2 UI designers 7 years ago. I was saying, the reason I wasn't saying it to brag, I was saying we were actually evangelizing over time to prove the value of this. I actually put together a quadrant, went into his office. I didn't do all the other scenario stuff, but I said, there are 2 things right now that we need to think about. The availability of designers and researchers, and the advocacy for it. If you write a check tomorrow and you give me everybody I want, but you guys don't advocate for this, we're screwed. if you guys advocate for us tomorrow and you don't write a check or any of this stuff, we're screwed. And I was able to show them on a quadrant what those look like. Now, I didn't give them the whole, like, hey, look at these 50 slides. I just said, this is what we're dealing with. Advocacy and availability. And when I did that, he was like, oh, I get it. Okay, cool. Well, I agree with you. Let's put this scale plan together because I want to move to this part of the block. So it was cool to kind of do that to break those, kind of break through some of the ambiguity. Yes?
In one of the earlier steps when you're casting your net, why do you cast the net, how many different viewpoints, and what, I guess, part of the whole process does it take? So do you does the front end look good or do a lot of casting?
So you're talking about like when we created the quadrant?
Dragnet.
Oh, I see what you're saying. When I had done, I mean, you could probably go on forever. You're going to have to time box it, right? And I think that also goes back to the research question. If that research question is tighter, then it creates that boundary box for us to say, okay, this is a little bit easier, more manageable for us to deal with. The 4 scenarios thing, I've seen people do them where they'll create like these 3D, right? It gets ridiculous. I think it's good to have that well-structured research question to keep you in balance. And then I think you'll start to get to a point, what is it like with learning French? I'm learning French, learning any language, but where they say, oh, in 2 years you could learn 90% of French, but to learn 100% it can take you 20 years. I think it's one of those. You'll start reading through all of these papers and you'll see like, oh, I see this over and over. Oh, I see this about population and climate change. Oh, I see this about, and then those themes will just start coming together. And for me, that's when I just stopped. I went, yeah, I'm seeing these, now I'm reading other papers and maybe I get 1 or 2 things out of it.
Good.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you guys so